Thank you, Diana, for your support, and thank you also, Deb, for a very kind introduction. I want to particularly thank you. It's a tribute to our democracy that so many of you have shown up and expressed your interest in what is happening today, and what has happened historically, and most importantly, what's going to happen in the future. Let me first of all say, since each of you got a Constitution, a one day late, happy Constitution Day. Technically, it was yesterday. We had a debate, a presidential debate yesterday, and we're also handing out Constitutions at that event. And we are at the Hauenstein Center extremely proud to be able to partner with the advocates and to get to know the good people who have been working so hard to bring about this program. So my hat's off to them as well. The Hauenstein Center has as one of its three pillars for existence to build up citizenship. So this was perfectly compatible with our mission as a center. And it's my particular honor and privilege today at this podium to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, E.J. Dionne. Now what I thought I would do is introduce him by the numbers. Let me start with number 4. E.J. Dionne wears 4 professional hats. You probably most likely have encountered E.J. as a commentator, a columnist for the Washington Post. He's been a columnist with the Washington Post since 1993, seasoned observer. You've also, no doubt, heard him as a commentator on NPR. I'm looking at Shelley Earl down there, and so E.J. is a familiar sound on our radio. The third hat is that E.J. is a university professor at Georgetown, where he teaches the rising generation. And a fourth hat that you've seen him, perhaps, is as a senior fellow at Brookings, the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C., where if you're like me and you watch C-SPAN late at night, you'll sometimes see him coming on and discoursing many interesting ideas of the day. Let's go to number 3. Now, E.J. has been very involved in a number of books. He's edited some books, for example, with interesting people, but there are 3 books that he's authored solo that I'd like to point out. Why Americans Hate Politics in 1991. This is an interesting book because it won the Los Angeles Times Book Prize and was a National Book Award nominee. He's also the author of Stand Up, Fight Back, Republican Toughs, Democratic Wimps, and the Politics of Revenge in 2004. And finally, They Only Look Dead, Why Progressives Will Dominate the Next Political Era, which he authored in 1996. 2. E.J. Dionne has 2 degrees. He has a BA from Harvard that he earned in 1973, and he was also elected Phi Beta Kappa when he was at Harvard. And he has a DPhil, a Doctor of Philosophy, from Balliol College in Oxford. He went to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. Number 1. Well, there are a lot of number 1s I can think of when I think of E.J. Dionne. And I could say he's the number 1 columnist for many of us here. We could say he's the number 1 speaker in town. We know the competition. I'll just settle for he's one heck of an interesting guy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome E.J. Dionne.
Thanks for that generous introduction. It was so much more generous than the one I received recently, where the person introducing ended. And now, for the latest dope from Washington, here's E.J. Dionne. So thank you very, very much. Thanks also to the organizers. I've only known Deb Snow for about 8 hours, but I already know she's that kind of person where she just tells you to do something and you do it. And so I've learned she's been teaching for 38 years, bless her for that, and also Diana Seeger and her work. And by the way, I'm wearing the pin you see here was given to me by Celia Said, who's somewhere in the audience. It's a U.S. Constitution. Which seems like a cause that should unite us and not divide us. Although in the Q&A, who knows, we may argue about the Constitution. It's also very generous of you to have someone from the media here. The media, my wife is a lawyer and I love because sometimes they keep us out of the cellar in those polls of most honored professions in the country. But these days, your email address runs at the bottom of your column, and so you hear a lot from your readers, and somehow human nature, I think, takes over, and you tend to hear more from people who disagree with you than agree. One of my favorite repeatable in this polite company emails I got began, "Dear Mr. Dionne, are you as dumb in person?" And if you get nothing else out of my talk this night, you'll be able to answer that question for yourself. I'm honored to be in town at the same time as my friend George Will. I'm sure there might be conservatives in the audience who will say they're charging for Will and I'm free and you get what you pay for. It's also, by the way, great to be in Grand Rapids. I've been here a lot over the years. I've been in Michigan a lot over the years. And you might have heard what happened today with Sarah Palin, where she went to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and said that she was happy to be in Grand Rapids. Now, some people might view that as a gaffe, but I think that's unfair. All it does is it proves that once you go to Cedar Rapids, it just never leaves you. And so when I wake up Saturday morning and look at my kids and say, I'm glad I'm in Grand Rapids, I hope they will understand. I also want to say it's great to be in Gerald Ford's hometown. Those of you who read my column know that my politics don't necessarily run his way, and God bless the Grand Rapids Press for running the column. I'm grateful for that. But I've always had an enormous admiration for Gerald Ford, and it's not just because he reflected the decency of the place he grew up in, and it's not just that he took over the country at a very difficult moment, and I think left it in better shape than he found it, but it's also that he had a real sense of stewardship, which I think is one of the essential things for someone in public office. He had a sense of stewardship about the presidency itself and a sense of stewardship about the country. And I just am very glad I'm in his town, and I think, like a lot of Americans, I'm grateful to him. I also want to acknowledge somebody I know affectionately as Uncle Rob Ehrlich, who was a kind of niece. Worked for me until very recently when she left for the excellent reason that she had a baby. And Uncle Rob is someone of very strong political views, and he disagrees with almost everything I write. So first, don't associate him with anything that I say. But secondly, I started a discussion blog, and he was able to redirect his emails to me to a much larger audience and invited a lot of conservative voices into the blog. It's now sort of like an argument in a bar without the alcohol. You know, you go back and forth, and I knew you'd say that, or you say that every time, stuff like that. But I brought a saying for you, Uncle Rob. I just learned that one of Mario Cuomo's favorite sayings is, "A day without an argument is a lost opportunity." That is a great idea. And before I go to my talk, I just want to note that this is a very nasty campaign we're in, and it's getting nastier. And whenever I get depressed about such things, I think of Louisiana politics, and that makes me feel better. I'm from Massachusetts, and I love Louisiana because it makes politics in my home state look clean. But it is also one of the most colorful states in the Union. There's a great former governor named Edwin Edwards, who was frequently indicted, and he once went to the voters and said, there's no one more honest than me because no one's been acquitted as often as me. And he knew, the voters in the state knew that he was not necessarily the most, in the traditional sense, honest public servant, but he was very lovable. And he was running against someone in the midst of a deep recession in the state. Unemployment was up at around 11%. And he said, if you re-elect my opponent, there'll be nothing left for me to steal. And in fact, he kept his promise. The economy got better, and he eventually went to the slammer. But he also once said of his opponent that my opponent is so dumb that it takes him 2 hours to watch 60 Minutes.